Hello. It's so lovely to be back sharing simple tips for a happy and active life with you. Today, we'll talk about something very dear to each of our hearts, our grandchildren. Tell me, have you ever had that feeling? You look at your grown-up or still very young grandchildren, your heart overflows with love and the desire to share wisdom, warn against mistakes, offer guidance. And in response, you get either polite silence, a sudden wall of misunderstanding, or even offense. It seems you had the best intentions, but it turned out the usual way. Sound familiar? This doesn't happen because you're bad grandparents. Oh no. It's just that the world is changing, and sometimes our words, full of the best intentions, sound completely different to the younger generation than we expect. They can be perceived as criticism, pressure, or an attempt to invade their personal space, even if we never intended anything of the sort. It's like trying to open a new lock with an old key. The key might be good, and the lock is new, but it doesn't fit. And so, instead of building bridges of understanding, we unintentionally build walls. But don't worry, today we'll break down 7 specific key topics that most often don't fit the locks of our grandchildren's hearts. And I promise, by understanding why these topics are so sensitive and slightly changing your approach, you'll see how your relationships become warmer, more trusting, and stronger. No complex psychological tricks, just simple, understandable steps based on respect and love. Let's learn together to speak the same language as our dear grandchildren so that the bond between generations only strengthens. Stay with me. This will be a very important conversation. And the first very delicate area is your grandchildren's appearance, especially their weight or clothing style. I know, sometimes you just want to say, "Oh, you should lose a little weight. It would be easier for you," or "What are those holes in your jeans?" In our day, we think it's caring. But what does the grandchild hear? "You're not good enough. You disappoint me. Your choice is wrong." In a world already obsessed with beauty standards, our remarks, even the most innocent in our view, can wound very deeply. Let me tell you the story of Margaret, 68 years old. Her granddaughter Chloe, a lovely 17-year-old girl, had gained a little weight due to stress from exams. Margaret, meaning only well, gently hinted at every meeting, "Chloe dear, maybe you should eat fewer pastries. Think about your health, and dresses would fit better." Margaret remembered her own youth, when slimness was almost the main virtue for a girl, and she sincerely worried about her granddaughter. She saw only love and care in her words. But Chloe heard something else. She heard judgment. Each such remark was like a small pinprick, a reminder of her imperfection. She began to avoid meeting her grandmother, calling less often. When they did see each other, Chloe was tense, withdrawn, constantly pulling at her sweater as if trying to hide. Margaret was desperate. She felt her beloved granddaughter drifting away and didn't understand why her good advice led to such results. It seemed to her she was simply fulfilling her grandmotherly duty to care, but in reality, she was destroying trust. Psychologically, for a teenager or young adult, self-acceptance is the foundation of confidence. Criticizing their appearance, especially from a loved one, hits this foundation like a sledgehammer. It doesn't motivate. It makes them feel flawed, misunderstood. One day, Margaret shared her sadness with a friend who advised her to change tactics. Instead of comments about appearance, focus on Chloe's personality, her successes, her kindness. Margaret decided to try. At their next meeting, she refrained from comments about weight. Instead, she said, "Chloe, I'm so proud of how you handled those tough exams. You're so smart and determined." Another time, "You know, I love your sense of humor. It's always so easy and fun with you." Chloe was wary at first, expecting a catch. But as her grandmother continued to notice her talents, her kindness, her efforts, the ice began to melt. Chloe started to relax in Margaret's presence, began sharing her thoughts and feelings again. Their relationship didn't just recover, it became deeper. Margaret realized her love and acceptance meant much more to her granddaughter than advice about diet. Our words can be like seeds. Some grow into weeds of doubt and resentment, others into flowers of confidence and love. Choose words that nourish, not wound, focusing on the treasures within, not the outer shell. That's so important. And the same applies to another very personal area, their matters of the heart, romantic relationships, and choice of partner. Oh, how we sometimes want to voice our opinion about their chosen one. She isn't right for you, too flighty. Why don't you find someone more serious? So, when's the wedding? Based on our experience, we know how important the right choice of life partner is, and we want to protect them from mistakes. But for a young person, their romantic feelings are their sacred territory. An unsolicited criticism or advice is perceived as an invasion and distrust of their own choices and feelings. Let's remember Arthur, 72 years old. His grandson Liam, a 25-year-old man, started dating a girl who seemed to Arthur, well, let's just say not quite suitable. She was an artist, dressed brightly, spoke loudly, the complete opposite of the good daughter-in-law image Arthur had in mind. He couldn't resist skeptical remarks. Liam, are you sure about her? She seems so frivolous. And what does she even do for a living? Arthur thought he was opening his grandson's eyes, helping him be realistic. And Liam? He loved his girlfriend, and he loved his grandfather. Arthur's remarks put him in a terrible position. He felt caught between two fires. He began telling his grandfather less and less about his personal life, then stopped bringing his girlfriend over altogether. Arthur noticed the distance, felt bitter. He was used to Liam sharing everything with him, and now, a wall. He felt rejected, misunderstood in his good intentions. He just wanted his grandson to be happy. Psychologically, choosing a partner is one of the most important expressions of autonomy for a developing adult. By criticizing this choice, we implicitly say, "You're not capable of making decisions yourself, I know better." This undermines their confidence and forces them to defend their choice, even if deep down they have doubts. Arthur, a wise man, realized he was losing his connection with his grandson. He decided to change his approach. Instead of criticism, show interest. He started asking Liam, "What do you like most about Emily? What brings you two together? Tell me, what is she passionate about?" He began to listen to the answers without interrupting or judging. In his grandson's stories, he saw not a frivolous girl, but a talented, kind young woman who made Liam happy. When Emily came to visit next time, Arthur talked to her about her paintings, praised her work. Liam simply glowed with happiness. The wall crumbled. Liam started trusting his grandfather again, sharing his joys and doubts. Arthur understood. His role is not a judge, but a supportive harbor where his grandson can dock and share his innermost thoughts, knowing he will be heard and accepted. Imagine their relationship as a garden they are cultivating themselves. You can be a guest in this garden, admire the flowers, but you shouldn't pull out plants you don't like, or dictate how to water them unless asked. Offer your grandchildren your ears to listen, not your opinion to judge, unless they ask for it. Of course, choosing a partner is their decision, just like choosing their own path in life, their profession. And here, our anxieties can also play a cruel joke. This is another topic where our expectations can clash with our grandchildren's reality, their career and life path. Based on our experience, we often see correct and reliable professions: doctor, lawyer, engineer. And suddenly, a grandchild decides to become a blogger, musician, designer, or go volunteering in another country. Our first reaction? Anxiety. How will they earn a living? That's not serious. Why are you wasting time on nonsense? We think we're saving them from future disappointments, but they hear, "You've disappointed me. I don't believe in you. Your dreams are foolish." Here's the story of Eleonora, 70 years old. Her granddaughter Sophia had been drawing beautifully since childhood. Eleonora was proud of her talent, but when Sophia announced after school that she wanted to go to art college, not the economics faculty as her parents and grandmother advised, Eleonora panicked. "Sophia, dear, but how will you live? Artists often struggle. Think about stability." Eleonora remembered acquaintances whose children chose impractical professions and later struggled to make ends meet. She genuinely feared for her beloved granddaughter's future. She envisioned poverty and instability. Sophia, however, full of enthusiasm and faith in her dream, felt as if her closest relatives had betrayed her. She stopped showing her grandmother her work, became withdrawn. It seemed to her that her grandmother didn't understand the main thing, her passion, her calling. For her, it wasn't just drawing, it was her life. Psychologically, choosing one's path is a search for self-realization. When loved ones don't support this search, It feels like a devaluation of the person themselves. Support, on the other hand, gives wings, gives strength to move forward, even if the path is difficult. Eleonora saw the spark fade in her granddaughter's eyes during conversations about the future. She realized her fears were destroying their closeness. She decided to change tactics. Instead of talking about risks, she started asking Sophia about her work. "Tell me about this painting. What did you want to convey? What technique are you using? That's so interesting. I see how much soul you put into this." She attended a student art exhibition where Sophia participated and sincerely admired her talent. She said, "Sophia, maybe I don't understand everything about modern art, but I see how your eyes light up when you draw, and I believe you'll succeed because you put your whole self into it." For Sophia, these words were more precious than gold. She felt supported, accepted. She started telling her grandmother about her ideas and projects with enthusiasm again. Their bond became even stronger. Eleonora understood that her task was not to pave the road for her granddaughter, but to illuminate the path Sophia chose for herself with a flashlight. Imagine each person's life path as a unique journey. We can be fellow travelers, offer a map of our experience, but we cannot force them to follow our route. Their path is their own. Celebrate their unique path, even if it seems unknown to you. Your faith in them is the best compass. Supporting their chosen path, even if we don't fully understand it, is an act of love. But what you definitely shouldn't do out of love is criticize their parents, our own children, in their presence or to them. This is perhaps one of the most destructive topics for family ties. Your mom is too soft on you. Your father is always away at work, doesn't pay any attention to you. Why do they let you stay up so late? We might think we are protecting the grandchild's interests or trying to help our children become better parents. But what really happens? We put the child in an unbearable loyalty bind. Who should they listen to? Their beloved grandparent or their beloved parents? This creates anxiety and guilt in the child and undermines the parent's authority in their eyes. Listen to the story of David, 75 years old. He loved his grandson Noah, a 10-year-old boy, very much, but believed his son, Noah's father, spoiled the child too much, didn't teach him discipline. When Noah visited his grandfather, David often told him, "See, Noah, your father lets you do anything, and that's wrong. A man should be strict, or did your mom buy you another expensive toy? Better spent on something useful." David thought he was educating his grandson, instilling proper values. He remembered his own strict childhood and believed it made him strong. And Noah? He loved his dad, his mom, and his grandpa. His grandfather's words confused him, made him feel uncomfortable. He didn't know how to react. He began to avoid being alone with his grandfather, became less talkative. When David started criticizing his parents, Noah would just stay silent or try to change the subject. David felt this alienation, but attributed it to a difficult age. He didn't realize that he himself was creating a gap between himself and his grandson by forcing him to choose between the people he loved. Psychologically, for a child, parents are the center of their world, their support and security. Undermining their authority, especially by another significant adult, destabilizes this world. The child instinctively protects their parents, even if they don't show it outwardly, and distances themselves from the source of criticism. Fortunately, David's wife, a wise woman, noticed this and gently spoke to her husband. She explained that his criticism hurt not only their son, but also Noah, putting him in a false dilemma. David was shocked. He couldn't imagine the harm his words were causing. He decided to stop immediately. He stopped criticizing his son in Noah's presence. If he disliked something about the parenting methods, he discussed it directly with his son and daughter-in-law, privately, respectfully offering his perspective rather than imposing it. When interacting with Noah, he focused on their shared interests, fishing, chess, stories about the past, and a miracle happened. Noah became open and cheerful again, happily spending time with his grandfather. David understood. His task is to be a loving grandfather, not a supervisor of the upbringing process. A family is a team. You can't criticize one player in front of another. It weakens the whole team. Support the entire family system. Your role is to be a source of love and wisdom, not discord. Maintaining harmony in the family, respecting the grandchildren's parents, that's fundamental. And it's equally important to respect another part of their adult lives, their financial independence. Money and spending are another sensitive zone. Comments about how grandchildren spend money, how much they earn, what they save for or don't save for. Why did you buy such an expensive phone? In our time, we saved on everything. You should be saving more, not spending on entertainment. We often say this out of a desire to teach them financial literacy, protect them from debt, share our experience of surviving harder times. But how is it perceived? As judgment of their choices, distrust of their ability to manage their finances, an invasion of a very personal sphere. Barbara, 69 years old, had always been very frugal. She raised her children in difficult times and knew the value of every penny. Her granddaughter Emily, 22, worked and supported herself, but in Barbara's opinion, spent money too frivolously, buying a new dress, going to cafes with friends, getting a concert ticket. Barbara couldn't help sighing and remarking, "Emily, another new thing? Have you thought about a rainy day? You'd be better off saving that money for a down payment on an apartment." Barbara sincerely believed she was helping her granddaughter become more responsible. She remembered how she had denied herself everything for her children's future. And Emily? She felt guilty for every purchase, for every little joy. It seemed her grandmother didn't understand her, that she lived in a different world with different opportunities and priorities. She started hiding her purchases from Barbara, avoiding conversations about money. When her grandmother asked where she was going, Emily answered evasively. Barbara felt this secrecy, felt hurt. She thought, "I only wish her well, and she hides everything from me." Psychologically, for a young adult, financial independence is an important stage of development. Comments and criticism from loved ones can cause shame, feelings of inadequacy, and a desire to protect their autonomy, even through secrecy. Furthermore, economic realities today are very different, and comparing how it was in our day is often simply inappropriate. Barbara noticed their conversations had become superficial. She shared her concerns with her daughter, Emily's mother. Her daughter gently explained that Emily is an adult who earns her own money and has the right to decide how to spend it, and that the constant remarks only push her away. Barbara thought about it. She realized that her fears and habits from the past were preventing her from accepting her granddaughter's present. She decided to change her behavior. She stopped commenting on Emily's spending. Instead, if the conversation turned to finances, she might say something like, "It's great that you can afford things that bring you joy," or "Financial independence is a big achievement." If Emily asked for advice herself, Barbara shared her experience, but without judgment or pressure, and Emily gradually relaxed. She started sharing her plans, joys, and sometimes even financial difficulties with her grandmother again, knowing she would receive support, not reproaches. Imagine a person's finances as their personal diary or budget book. Peeking into it without permission and criticizing the entries is rude and counterproductive. Respect their financial autonomy. Your experience is invaluable, but share it only when asked. Respecting their financial decisions. And it's also important to respect their uniqueness and not give in to the temptation to compare them with others. This is another mistake we often make with the best intentions, comparing grandchildren to someone else, their siblings, cousins, friends' children, or even ourselves at their age. Well, when I was your age. We think we are motivating them, showing them a role model. Look how well your brother studies. Your cousin is already married and you're still single. At your age, I was already raising 3 kids. What does the grandchild hear? You're not good enough, you're worse than others, you don't meet my expectations. Comparisons rarely motivate. More often, they wound and kill self-esteem. George, 77 years old, was very proud of his older grandson, who was successfully building a career in a large company. His younger grandson, Michael, 20, was more of a creative soul, searching for himself, trying different part-time jobs, passionate about photography. George, wishing Michael the same success, constantly held up the older brother as an example. "Michael, when are you going to get serious? Look at Daniel, that's stability. You should learn responsibility from your brother." George thought he was spurring Michael on, guiding him onto the right path. He remembered how he himself was compared to more successful peers in childhood, and it seemed to him that it had toughened him up. And Michael? Every such comparison hit his self-esteem. He felt like a failure in his grandfather's eyes, the eternal second best. He began to avoid talking to George about his affairs, visited less often. It hurt him to hear that he wasn't like his brother. He felt misunderstood, undervalued in his own talents and aspirations. George noticed his grandson's coldness, but blamed it on youthful maximalism or laziness. He didn't understand that his words acted like poison, poisoning Michael's self-esteem and their relationship. Psychologically, every person is unique. Comparing them to others ignores this uniqueness and makes the person feel defective if they don't match the imposed model. This can lead to anxiety, self-doubt, and resentment towards the person making the comparison. One day, Michael couldn't take it anymore and told his grandfather, "Grandpa, I'm not Daniel, I'm me. Please stop comparing us." George was stung by these words, but they also made him think. He talked to his wife, and she confirmed that his constant comparisons deeply hurt Michael. George realized his mistake. He loved both grandsons but showed it differently. He decided to focus on Michael's unique qualities. He asked Michael to show him his photographs, sincerely praised his talent for seeing beauty in the ordinary. He started asking Michael about his hobbies, supporting his search for himself. He told him, "Michael, I realized I was wrong comparing you to your brother. You are different, and that's wonderful. I'm proud of you just the way you are, for your talent, your kind heart." Michael was moved to tears. That was exactly what he needed to hear. Their relationship improved, became warmer and more sincere. Imagine each of your grandchildren as a unique flower in the garden. Would you scold a rose for not being a lily, or a tulip for not being a daisy? Each is beautiful in its own way. Appreciate the uniqueness of each grandchild. Comparisons steal joy and destroy closeness. Notice and praise their individual strengths, appreciating each one's uniqueness without comparing. And we should approach their views on the world, politics, and sensitive social issues in the same way, even if these views differ greatly from ours. This is the last topic for today, but no less important, and it can become a real minefield. The world is changing, and the younger generation's views on many things can be radically different from ours. Trying to persuade them, impose your point of view, criticize their views or idols, is a sure way to cause conflict and alienation. How can you support that politician? All this tolerance stuff of yours is nonsense. Young people just don't understand anything. We think we are sharing life wisdom, opening their eyes to the truth, but they hear disrespect for their opinion, their values, their generation. Susan, 71 years old, was a woman with very firm political convictions. She actively followed the news, had an opinion on every issue, and considered it her duty to enlighten others, especially young people. Her granddaughter Jessica, 19, was studying at university, interacting with different people, and her views on many social and political issues were forming under the influence of new information and surroundings. They often did not coincide with her grandmother's views. Every meeting risked turning into a heated argument. Susan would start with an innocent question about the news and end with emotional tirades about how everything is going downhill and how young people appreciate nothing. She sincerely believed she was saving her granddaughter from wrong ideas. Jessica initially tried to argue, defend her point of view, but seeing that her grandmother didn't listen, only got worked up and criticized, she began to avoid these topics. And then she started trying to shorten her visits to her grandmother altogether because they became a source of stress for her, not joy. She loved her grandmother, but these constant ideological battles exhausted her. Susan felt her granddaughter drifting away, but blamed it on propaganda and the pernicious influence of the university. She didn't understand that she herself was pushing Jessica away with her intransigence. Psychologically, for young people, their views are part of their developing identity. Aggressive criticism of these views is perceived as an attack on the person themselves. Respectful dialogue is possible, but trying to remake another person is almost always doomed to fail and leads to a breakdown in communication. Fortunately, Susan once overheard friends complaining about similar problems with their children and grandchildren, and one of them said, "I realized that maintaining a warm relationship is more important to me than proving I'm right." This phrase stuck with Susan. She realized she risked losing her connection with her beloved granddaughter over politics. She decided to try a different approach. When Jessica came next time, Susan consciously avoided controversial topics. They talked about Jessica's studies, her friends, books, summer plans. If Jessica herself brought up a sensitive topic, Susan tried not to argue, but to ask questions. Why do you think so? What attracts you to that? That's an interesting point of view. I hadn't thought about it that way. She learned to listen and hear, even if she disagreed. Jessica was surprised and pleased. Their communication became calm, warm, and trusting. They discovered they still had much in common, that they were united by love for each other, which was more important than any political disagreements. Imagine conversation as a shared home. If you constantly bring the explosives of your most categorical opinions into it, no one will want to stay there long. It's better to make this home a cozy and safe place for everyone. Strive for understanding, not victory in arguments. Focus on what unites you, not what divides you. Love and respect are more important than political battles. My dears, we have now looked at these 7 topics that can become stumbling blocks in communication with our grandchildren. Please don't take this as a reproach or a list of prohibitions. Take it as an invitation to be a little more sensitive, to understand the world of the younger generation, their feelings and experiences. Your wisdom, your life experience, it's a priceless gift. But your greatest gift to your grandchildren is your unconditional love and acceptance. You have every right to warm, trusting, joyful relationships with them at any age, theirs and yours. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to learn a new language of communication, the language of respecting their boundaries and their choices. Remember the stories of Margaret, Arthur, Eleonora, David, Barbara, George, and Susan. They found a way to their grandchildren's hearts, and you can too. Your love can work wonders. You just need to direct it so that it warms, not burns. Thank you for spending this time with me. Believe in yourselves, believe in your grandchildren, and may your relationships be a source of endless joy and warmth for you. You can do this. I believe in you.